Good evening, and welcome back to Sleepy History Archive. Tonight we are not going into a royal court or a battlefield. We are only stepping slowly through a medieval town on a winter night, when the air is clear, the roofs hold frost, and ordinary life begins to draw inward toward fire, wool, and sleep. Nothing here needs to be dramatic in order to feel alive. In fact, the absence of drama is what allows the town to become so restful in the mind. A town after sunset was never completely silent, but winter softened it. Trade ended earlier, shutters closed sooner, breath showed in the air, and every warm room became more precious. Streets that felt busy in daylight could feel almost ceremonial at night, as if the stone itself were listening. So settle in, and let us walk very slowly through gates, lanes, hearths, lofts, porches, taverns, wells, stables, and rooftops while a cold sky settles over the town. Winter also rewards repetition. The same tasks return night after night, and that regularity is one of history's most calming textures. Chapter 1: Rain over the Stone Quay. The final strip of daylight fades across the harbor basin slowly, as if it is reluctant to leave the wet stones. A Roman quay at this hour is not empty, but it is no longer busy in the confident way of afternoon. The strongest light has gone from the water, and what remains is a pewter shine broken by the rocking of moored boats. Rain falls into that shine and softens it. Each drop disappears at once, yet together they make the basin seem textured, almost woven. The boats move just enough to remind you that the town is built beside something alive. The stone underfoot has turned dark. In the day, the quay may have looked pale, dusty, and warm, marked by wheel ruts, footprints, spilled grain, bits of rope fiber, and the powder of dried salt. Now the rain has gathered all those traces and hidden them under a smooth surface. The stones reflect lamps that have only just been lit. They reflect the underside of awnings, the bent shapes of people passing, and the faint orange of a brazier near a warehouse wall. It is not grand light. It is working light, used for finishing tasks rather than beginning them. A man at the edge of the quay checks a knot with both hands. He is not in a hurry. The rope has swelled a little in the damp, and the fibers are rough against his palms. He leans his weight back, tests the line, then gives it one more pull, not because he doubts it, but because habit is stronger than thought at the end of a long day. Beside him, a younger worker lifts a coil of rope from a puddle and hangs it over a post where it can drip. Their words are low. The rain does most of the speaking. Behind them, the town begins to gather itself inward. Doorways that stood open all day now frame smaller scenes, a woman shaking rain from a cloak, a porter lowering a basket from his shoulder, a child watching the harbor from behind an adult's elbow, an old man counting something on his fingers before closing a small wooden box. Nobody appears to be performing for anyone else. The evening asks for practical attention, and practical attention has a restful quality when it is not urgent. It is easy, standing here, to forget the larger map. Grain may have come from one coast, oil from another, wine from somewhere inland, letters from a city you will never visit, and rumors from roads beyond the hills. Yet in the rain, everything becomes local. Empire becomes a wet doorstep, a tide boat, a lamp behind a shutter, a jar moved away from the drip line. The stone quay holds the whole arrangement patiently, receiving the rain as it has received countless evenings before. For sleep, this is a useful place to begin. The mind does not need a plot. It only needs a surface to rest upon, and the quay provides one, broad, damp, darkening, quietly reliable. The water rocks. The ropes hold. The first lamps burn. The rain keeps falling with no sharp edge to it, and the town accepts the weather as part of its nightly routine. Chapter 2: Wet Rope and Quiet Masts. Once the eye has adjusted to the rain, the ropes become more noticeable. They run from boat to post, from post to ring, from ring to wet timber, each line holding a small piece of the harbor in place. Some are thick and furred from use, dark and almost black by the water. Others are newer, paler where the fibers have not yet taken on much tar, salt, and handling. In daylight they are tools. At night they become lines in a drawing, leading the mind from the quay to the boats and back again. The masts rise above the harbor like thin trees stripped of leaves. In the rain they do not creak loudly, they answer the wind with small, occasional sounds. A block knocks once, then is still. A loose end taps against a spar. Somewhere a leather cover flutters and settles. The whole group of vessels seems to be breathing very quietly, held by rope, weight, habit, and the sheltered shape of the basin. The sea beyond the breakwater may be wider and less certain, but here the water is contained enough to feel almost domestic. A sailor crosses a narrow plank with the careful slowness of a person who has done it thousands of times and therefore does not pretend it is simple. He carries a covered basket against his ribs. Rain beads on his hair and runs down the side of his neck. When he steps onto the quay, he pauses to shift the basket to his other arm, and the movement is so ordinary that it seems to belong to every harbor evening in every age. The cargo is not described, because it does not need to be. It is something that must stay dry enough until morning. Nearby, two workers crouch over a knot near the stone edge. One holds the line steady while the other tucks the end beneath a loop and pulls it through. Their fingers are damp, and they laugh once when the rope resists them. The laugh is small, not the loud laugh of a feast or a drinking room, but the private laugh of people finishing a task together in bad weather. It vanishes quickly into the rain, leaving behind the softer sound of their breathing and the scrape of sandals against stone. The smell here is stronger than it was in the market streets: salt water, wet hemp, tar, fish, old wood, and the faint sourness of bilge. None of it is unpleasant when imagined from a distance. It is simply the harbor's own language, made sharper by damp air. The Roman town has many smells, and rain does not erase them. It lifts them, separates them, lets each one stand for a moment before it blends back into the general atmosphere of evening. By now the boats are secured, or nearly so. The last adjustments are not dramatic. They are the kind of actions that continue after the main work is complete: a second look at a knot, a hand laid flat on a post, a coil placed under shelter, a glance toward the sky. Then the workers draw their cloaks closer and move toward lamplight. Behind them, the masts remain in the rain, quiet, vertical, and patient, as if they too have agreed to wait for morning. Chapter 3: Porters under awning cloth. Under the awnings along the harbor street, the porters gather in loose groups, not because a meeting has been called, but because weather has made the same decision for everyone. The cloth above them sags slightly where water collects, then releases a narrow stream from one corner. Every few breaths a drop lands hard in the same puddle with a sound brighter than the rain around it. Beneath this shelter, men and women shift baskets, bundles, shoulder poles, and rolled mats with the careful economy of tired bodies. A porter lowers his load onto two stones so the bottom will not sit directly in water. Another checks the binding around a jar. Someone unties a wet strip of cloth from a handle, twists it once, and ties it again. The motions are small, but they have weight. In a port town, many things depend on goods remaining intact through weather, waiting, and careless hands. Evening does not end responsibility, it only changes the form of it. Carrying becomes checking. Shouting becomes speaking. Speed becomes patience. The awning cloth smells of wet fiber and dust. Earlier in the day it held off sun, and now it holds off rain. Its underside is stained by smoke, salt, and old seasons. When wind moves along the street, the cloth lifts and falls with a tired, sail-like motion, reminding everyone that the town and the ships are made of related materials: rope, wood, canvas, oil, and knots. A hand reaches up to push water from a low pocket in the awning, and the sudden spill makes two people step aside with sleepy amusement. Conversation under shelter has its own softness. Voices do not travel far because the rain surrounds them. A man describes the price of something, but without the energy to argue. A woman says she will wait until the shower weakens before crossing the open street. Someone mentions a cousin expected by road, someone else says the road will be mud by now. None of these remarks needs to become a story. They are fragments of a town thinking aloud at the end of the day. From where you stand, you can see the difference between dry and wet as a boundary. Under the awning, sandals scrape on gritty stone and people lean close to one another. Beyond the edge, the street shines and empties. A dog trots through the rain, pauses to shake itself under a cart, then continues. A child points at the dog, and an adult pulls the child back from the drip line. These are the gentle rules of the evening: stay under cover when possible, cross quickly when needed, keep the goods raised, keep the lamp dry, keep the voice low. After a while, the waiting becomes restful. The porters are not trapped, they are delayed in a way the town understands. The shower gives everyone permission to stop for a few minutes without calling it idleness. Loads remain balanced. Baskets remain covered. The awning darkens but holds. And the rain, falling on cloth instead of skin, becomes less like weather and more like a roof speaking steadily above tired shoulders. Chapter 4: Lamps in the Customs House. Inside the customs house, the rain is heard rather than felt. It taps against shutters, ticks from the roofline into a stone channel, and occasionally hisses when a gust blows water against the wall. The room is not large, but it feels important in the quiet way of places where people count, mark, seal, and remember. By day, voices may have filled it with questions about weights, origins, fees, and permissions. At night, its authority becomes smaller and more lamplit. A desk stands near the center, worn smooth where forearms have rested through many seasons. On it are wax tablets, a stylus, a small knife, bits of cord, a lump of sealing wax, and a lamp with a flame no larger than a fingernail. The flame leans whenever the door opens. It returns upright when the door closes. That small recovery repeats itself several times in the evening, until even the flame seems to know the rhythm of arrivals and departures. A clerk bends over a tablet and reviews marks made earlier in the day. The work is not glamorous. He is not composing poetry or issuing commands. He is matching one ordinary detail to another: the number of jars, the mark on a seal, the name of a trader, the storage place assigned until morning. His lips move once as he counts silently. He presses the stylus into wax, smooths a place with his thumb, and writes again. The sound is very slight, almost hidden under the rain. Near the wall, a bundle of documents rests inside a wooden box raised from the floor. Damp is the quiet enemy of every record, and in a harbor town there is always damp. Someone has moved the box away from a place where the roof sometimes leaks. Someone else has placed a cloth over it. These gestures are not heroic, but they show the practical intelligence of the evening. Rome, in this room, is not an eagle standard or a triumphal arch. It is a dry box, a readable mark, a seal that has not cracked. A man arrives late with his cloak pulled high around his neck. He brings a question about a load that cannot be moved until morning. The clerk does not become irritated. The hour has lowered everyone's expectations. They speak beside the desk, both glancing at the lamp as if it were a third participant in the conversation. The answer is simple: leave it under the western shed, check the seal at first light, and do not drag the cart through the deeper puddles by the gate. When the man leaves, the room becomes still again. The clerk trims the lamp, checks the box, and sets the stylus parallel to the edge of the tablet with unnecessary care. Outside, the harbor is wet and dark. Inside, the small logic of the port has been arranged for sleep. Nothing here shines brightly, but everything has been made legible enough for morning to find it. Chapter 5: Fish Smell, Salt Air, and Olive Oil. Rain changes the smell of a harbor more than it changes the sight of it. Sight notices lamps, reflections, and darkened walls, but smell knows where the day has been. Along the Roman quay, the damp air lifts fish from the stones, salt from the ropes, oil from jars, smoke from cooking fires, and the resinous memory of amphorae that carried wine, garum, or olives. The mixture is thick at first, but then the mind accepts it as part of the place, the way one accepts the smell of bread near an oven or wet leaves near a garden wall. At the edge of a covered stall, fish scales cling to a board in pale flashes. The seller has already rinsed the surface, but rinsing is never perfect. A shallow stream runs along the gutter and carries away bits of the day: herbs, mud, straw, a curl of onion skin, a thread from a basket. The rain does not make the street clean in a modern sense. It simply moves things along, making small departures out of whatever the afternoon left behind. Olive oil has its own presence in the evening. It waits in jars, feeds lamps, glosses bread, softens food, and leaves a faint rounded smell on fingers and clay. Near one doorway, a woman pours a little oil from a narrow vessel into a lamp, and the flame grows steadier. The motion is careful because oil is useful and not to be wasted. She wipes the mouth of the vessel with her thumb, sets it back on a shelf, and watches the flame for a moment before turning to the room behind her. Salt air comes in from the water and passes through everything. It lies on shutters, dries on skin, and finds its way into cloth. For people who live by the sea, it may be so familiar that they do not notice it unless they have been away. But to a visitor, especially one standing quietly in the rain, it is unmistakable. It gives the town a mineral edge, a reminder that every warm doorway is near a vast dark surface that cannot be owned, only used, crossed, respected, and watched. A small cooking fire burns under shelter, and the smell of lentils or beans begins to soften the stronger harbor odors. Someone stirs a pot. Someone breaks bread. A man tears a piece of bread, dips it, and eats without ceremony. The food is simple, but the scene is comforting because it belongs exactly to its hour. Rain outside, warmth inside, salt at the edges, oil in the lamp, food in a bowl, and no need to discuss anything loudly. By now the harbor has become a world of softened smells. Tar no longer seems harsh. Fish no longer seems sharp. Smoke no longer stings. Each has been lowered by the rain and folded into evening. The mind, following them, does not need to separate every source. It can rest in the mixture, knowing only that the town is damp, fed, lit, and close to the sea. Chapter 6: Warehouse Doors and Echoing Steps. The warehouses near the harbor are built for daylight labor, but evening gives them another character. Large doors stand half open while workers finish what cannot be left undone. Inside, stacked goods make narrow passages, and the roof catches the rain in a long, muted roar. The sound is less delicate here than under house tiles. It spreads across beams and storage rooms, making the interior feel larger and more hollow, as if the building itself is listening. Amphorae stand in rows, their pointed bases held by racks or packed material. Sacks rest on boards above the floor. Bales of cloth are covered against damp. Wooden chests sit under a wall where water is least likely to enter. Everything has its place, not because the place is perfect, but because repeated use has taught people where things are safest. A warehouse is a memory made of storage. What was damaged last winter, which corner leaks, which door swells, which shelf mice prefer, which lock needs lifting before it turns. A worker crosses the room carrying a small lamp. The flame turns stacked jars into rounded shadows. His steps echo, then are swallowed by the rain. He pauses beside a row of goods and touches a seal with 2 fingers. It has held. He moves to another, checks the cloth cover, and adjusts a stone used as a weight. None of this would interest a crowd, yet for the sleeping mind it is ideal, repeated, purposeful, quiet, and complete. Near the doorway, another person sweeps water away with a stiff broom. The broom does not make the floor dry. It only persuades the puddle to go somewhere less troublesome. This is much of ordinary life in one gesture, not perfect control, but small correction. The water gathers near the threshold, slips into the street, and joins the rain already running downhill toward the harbor. The worker leans on the broom for a moment and watches it go. The door itself has a voice. When pushed, it groans in a low wooden way. When the bar is lifted, iron touches iron with a dull note. When the wind presses from outside, the door gives a little and then returns. These sounds mark the end of activity more clearly than speech. A warehouse closing for the night does not become silent at once. It clicks, drips, settles, and exhales. At last the lamp moves back toward the entrance. The final look around is slow. Goods covered. Seals checked. Water moved. Door ready. Someone calls softly from outside, and the answer comes from within. Then the bar is set. The warehouse joins the other darkened shapes along the harbor street, holding its cargo through the rain with the quiet dignity of a place that has done this before. Chapter 7: Bakers by the Harbor Street. A bakery near the harbor keeps its own kind of evening. Even when the street has slowed and rain has thinned the crowd, the oven holds the memory of the day in its walls. Heat lingers in brick. Ash glows faintly beneath gray. The smell of bread moves out through the doorway and meets the wet air, making a small comfort that people notice before they decide to notice it. In a rainy town, warm bread is almost a form of light. The baker's work is nearly finished, but not quite. A final batch must be drawn out, counted, set aside, or handed to people who arrive late with damp cloaks and hungry faces. The loaves are not fancy. Some are round, some rougher, some marked by the baker's hand or by the scoring that helped them open in the heat. They rest on a board under cloth, cooling slowly while rain taps the street outside. A traveler buys one and holds it under his cloak as carefully as if it were a small animal. Flour clings to the baker's forearms, made patchy by sweat and damp air. He scrapes a table, folds a cloth, and checks the oven with the practiced glance of someone who knows heat by sight. Nearby, a helper gathers bits of wood and moves them farther from the doorway. Rain has blown in under the threshold and darkened the floor. A child, perhaps belonging to the household, uses one finger to trace a line through flour dust on a bench, then looks up when told gently to leave it. People come to a bakery at evening for more than food. They come because a bakery is a reliable place to find warmth, news, and a brief pause under cover. A porter says the rain will last. A woman says it will pass before midnight. Someone asks whether a certain boat came in. Someone else answers without certainty. The baker listens while wrapping bread in cloth. His trade makes him a witness to ordinary arrivals and departures, but tonight even the news has become soft at the edges. The oven mouth glows darker and redder as the room around it grows dim. Lamps are useful, but oven light has a deeper calm. It does not flicker nervously. It breathes from within brick, from stored heat, from the work already completed. The rain outside makes it seem even steadier. If the harbor smells of rope and fish, the bakery smells of grain transformed into rest. When the last customer leaves, the baker does not rush to close. He stands in the doorway and looks at the wet street, perhaps measuring the rain against the walk home, perhaps thinking of nothing at all. Behind him, loaves cool, embers lower, and flour settles. The bakery will wake early, before much of the town, but for this small hour it belongs to evening, to warmth, to simple hunger answered without drama. Chapter 8: Bath Steam in the Rain. The public baths near the port glow in the rainy evening with a warmth that can be felt before one enters. Outside, the street is slick and dark. Inside, the air is layered with steam, oil, damp skin, warmed stone, and quiet conversation. People come from labor into heat, and their bodies change pace. Shoulders lower. Steps slow. The rain remains present, tapping beyond the walls, but the bathhouse turns weather into contrast, wet outside, warm inside, night approaching, heat still held. A bathhouse at this hour is not necessarily silent, but its sounds are softened by vapor. Water is poured. A sandal slaps wet stone. A bronze vessel rings faintly when set down. Someone coughs once, then laughs under his breath. Someone discusses the price of grain in a voice too tired to argue. The day has not vanished from these people. It clings to them in dust, salt, sweat, and sore muscles. But the movement from room to room gives the day away to leave gradually. Near the entrance, cloaks hang from pegs or are held close to keep them from the spray of rain blowing in. A worker tends the practical side of comfort, fuel, water, towels, lamps, scraping tools, and the order of rooms. These duties are easy to overlook because the bath is remembered as leisure, yet leisure depends on labor continuing quietly in the background. Someone keeps the floor from becoming too slippery. Someone notices when a lamp smokes. Someone moves a bench. Steam gathers on the walls and beads along surfaces just as rain beads outside. The whole building seems to participate in water's many forms: rain from the sky, water in basins, vapor in the air, sweat on skin, droplets along tile, runoff in drains. In a Roman port town, where water carries ships, cleans bodies, cools stone, fills jars, and threatens storage, this evening bath feels like a peaceful agreement with the element that surrounds daily life. A man who has worked near the quay sits quietly with his elbows on his knees. He is not asleep, but he is close to the kind of inward stillness that comes before sleep. Another person rubs oil into arms made dry by salt and rope. A third speaks of going home before the rain grows heavier. Their voices do not rise. The bath has gathered them into the same slowed rhythm, and for a little while nobody needs to be impressive, quick, or especially alert. When they leave, the rain will touch their warm faces and make the street feel cooler than before. They will draw cloaks around themselves, step around puddles, and carry the bath's heat briefly into the night. Behind them, the steam will continue to thin and renew itself. The bathhouse will settle into lamplight, drains murmuring, walls shining, and the rain outside turning the whole building into a quiet refuge at the edge of the harbor. Slow interlude, listening to rain on tile. Before moving further away from the night, it is worth staying for a while with the roof sounds alone. The tiles do not speak in one voice. Some receive the rain directly and answer with a soft patter. Some are sheltered by a higher edge and only respond when water spills down to them in brief, heavier streams. Some are cracked, some newly set, some warmed all day by sun before the rain arrived. Together they make a patient surface above sleeping rooms, storerooms, kitchens, and stairways. If you imagine lying beneath such a roof, you do not need to know the exact shape of every tile. The sound gives you the shape slowly. A quick line of drops suggests a gutter. A duller note suggests a courtyard jar. A faint ticking near the wall suggests water touching wood or a shutter frame. The mind may name these things once and then stop naming them. After that, the roof is only roof, the rain is only rain, and the body is allowed to become heavy. This is the gentlest kind of historical imagination, not trying to own the past, not trying to sharpen it into a lesson, but letting a few ordinary materials become vivid enough to rest beside. Clay, water, wood, cloth, oil, salt, stone. These are enough for a night. They do not demand belief. They only ask to be noticed and then released. Chapter 9: Tavern Bowls and Cheap Wine. The taverns of the Harbour Street do not need to be lively to be useful. On a rainy Roman evening, their value is simpler: a roof, a bench, a bowl of something warm, a cup of watered wine, and a little human noise that does not ask too much of anyone. The doorway is dark at the edges and bright in the center, where lamplight reaches the wet street. People approach it with the slightly bent posture of those trying to keep rain from running down their necks. Inside, the room smells of damp wool, smoke, wine, lentils, garlic, old wood, and people who have worked since morning. Bowls are set down with hollow sounds. Bread is torn by hand. A server wipes a surface with a cloth that is already wet in 3 different ways. The wine is not luxurious, and no one pretends it is. It is mixed with water, poured into cups, and used to mark the end of effort. A man drinks, exhales, and looks at nothing in particular. The conversations are small and overlapping. Near one wall, 2 sailors speak about the next day's loading. At another table, a porter describes a mule that refused a turn in the road. Someone complains mildly about rain coming through a roof. Someone else says every roof leaks if the rain finds the right mood. The remark earns a tired smile. No one is trying to win the evening. The tavern holds people who have already spent their strongest words elsewhere. Rain on the roof makes privacy inside the shared room. A sentence spoken at one table does not travel cleanly to the next. It breaks against the weather, against bowls, against the scrape of benches. This is restful because it allows the mind to hear without following. The listener in bed can imagine voices as texture rather than information. A murmur. A cup. A laugh. A chair shifting. The soft scrape of bread against the inside of a bowl. Near the back, a lamp smokes for a moment before someone adjusts the wick. The flame clears. The wall behind it shows old stains, scratches, and perhaps a few marks left by people waiting, drinking, counting coins, or passing time. Such walls are archives without order. They remember elbows, backs, arguments, songs, and ordinary hunger. Tonight they remember rain, because everyone who enters brings a little of it with them. After a while, the room begins to thin. A few customers leave in pairs. One person lingers over the last of a bowl. Another pays with slow fingers. The server stacks cups and glances toward the doorway where the street glistens black and amber. The tavern does not close all at once. It fades by degrees, like the conversations inside it, until the rain outside becomes the clearest sound again. Chapter 10: Shutters Closing One by One. Along the port street, shutters close in a loose sequence, each one changing the sound of the neighborhood. A stall that has been open to the street all day becomes a wall again. A counter disappears behind wood. A hanging cloth is shaken, folded, and brought inside. The rain encourages closure without force. It tells each shopkeeper that enough business has been done, enough waiting has been allowed, and anything not sold tonight can be faced again in the morning. One shutter drops with a soft thud. Another resists because the wood has swollen. Its owner lifts it, sets it again, mutters gently, and tries from a slightly different angle. The latch finally catches. These small difficulties belong to wet evenings. Hinges complain. Door bars need persuasion. Leather straps stretch. A key that turned easily at noon now requires a patient wrist. The town is not broken. It is simply damp, and dampness has its own opinions about how objects should move. The closing of shops makes the remaining lights more noticeable. At first the street had many small claims on attention: fish, bread, oil, rope, tools, baskets, cups, voices, animals, carts, and strangers. Now the variety narrows. A bakery glow. A tavern doorway. A lamp in the customs house. A pale opening at the bathhouse. Each light appears farther from the others because darkness has filled the spaces between them. The rain polishes those spaces until they look deeper than they are. A shopkeeper counts coins near the threshold before stepping fully inside. The coins make a small, dry sound in a room otherwise shaped by wetness. He wraps them in cloth, tucks the bundle away, and lifts his lamp to inspect the floor. A few drops have blown under the door. He places a mat across the damp line, not because the mat will solve everything, but because it is something to do. An ordinary life is made of such modest answers. Across the street, someone calls good night. The reply comes from behind a half-closed shutter, muffled but friendly. In better weather they might have spoken longer, perhaps about prices, family, a shipment, or a rumor from inland. Tonight the rain shortens the exchange. It does not make people unfriendly, it only gives them permission to withdraw. The public face of the street folds inward, one wooden panel at a time. When the final shutters are in place, the neighborhood becomes less like a market and more like a row of sleeping chests. Inside them are goods, tools, ledgers, cloth, jars, and the remains of the day. Outside them are rain, stone, gutters, and the occasional passerby moving carefully through reflected light. The transition is gentle, and the mind can follow it easily. Open becomes closed, noise becomes murmur, business becomes rest. Chapter 11: Courtyard Water Jars. Away from the quay, in smaller houses and apartments, rain is heard differently. It no longer spreads across the broad harbor or strikes canvas awnings. It falls into courtyards, taps on roof tiles, runs from gutters, and gathers in jars placed where water can be useful. A Roman household does not treat rain only as inconvenience. It is also something to collect, redirect, avoid, and listen to. In the courtyard, water makes the house feel connected to the sky. A jar stands beneath a roof edge, receiving a steady drip. Each drop lands with a hollow note that changes as the water level rises. At first the sound is deep and empty. Later it becomes rounder, closer, more liquid. Someone has placed a piece of cloth over another jar to keep leaves and grit from falling in. A child has been told not to play with it. An older person checks the arrangement and moves one vessel a hand's width to the left, where the stream is cleaner. The courtyard stones shine under weak lamplight. They are uneven enough that puddles form in familiar places. The household knows these places without discussing them. Step near the wall, not the center. Keep the basket under the ledge. Do not leave sandals where the water runs. Pull the stool inside. Such knowledge is intimate, built over many evenings. A house is not only walls and rooms, it is a map of small weather habits. Inside, someone folds cloth and sets it away from damp air. Someone covers a bowl. Someone moves a lamp from one shelf to another because wind from the courtyard keeps troubling the flame. The room smells of food, oil, wet sandals, and cooling plaster. Beyond the doorway, the jar continues to fill, drop by drop, keeping time more gently than any clock. The household does not need to watch it constantly. It is enough to know it is there. A quiet exchange passes between two adults near the courtyard entrance. One asks whether the outer door is barred. The other says yes. One asks whether the smaller jar should be brought in. The answer is not yet. These are not anxious questions. They are the last threads of care before sleep. The mind repeats them because repetition is calming. The door is barred, the jar is placed, the lamp has oil, the cloth is folded, the rain is outside, the bed is waiting. Later, when the house grows darker, the water jar will keep sounding in the courtyard. Its slow filling will continue after conversation stops. To imagine it is to imagine an evening that does not end abruptly, but settles by layers. The harbor fades, the streets close, the rooms quiet, and in the courtyard the rain continues its patient work, making storage out of weather and music out of necessity. Chapter 12: Shrine Lamps in the Home. In many homes, evening turns attention toward a small sacred corner. It may be a household shrine, modest and familiar, with figures, offerings, a lamp, or a little space kept distinct from the practical clutter of the day. On a rainy night near the port, this corner does not need grandeur to feel important. Its power comes from repetition. A lamp is lit because lamps have been lit before. A small offering is arranged because arranging it gives the household a way to acknowledge continuity. The flame at the shrine is small, but in the darkening room it becomes a center. It touches the edges of clay, paint, wood, or plaster, and makes shadows that seem almost gentle. Outside, rain runs from roof tiles. Inside, a hand places a few crumbs, a flower, a pinch of something fragrant, or nothing more than attention itself. The gesture is brief. It does not interrupt the evening, it completes it. After labor, after food, after wet sandals and closing doors, there is this quiet act of remembering what holds the household together. A child watches from nearby, not fully understanding and not needing to. Children learn the evening first by watching where adults pause. They notice which shelf is not for play, which flame must not be touched, which words lower the room's voice. The rain helps. It gives the house a boundary, making the inner space feel warmer, smaller, and more deliberate. Even the ordinary objects around the shrine seem to draw closer: a stool, a folded cloth, a cup, a basket covered for mourning. The port town outside remains present through sound. A distant cartwheel passes over wet stone. A dog barks once. Someone calls from a nearby doorway, then the voice is gone. The shrine lamp does not answer these sounds, but it steadies the room while they pass. It is one of many small flames in the town, each one held behind a wall or shutter, each one making a private pocket of evening. No dramatic prayer is needed for this story. A sleep narrative is better served by the kind of reverence that appears in care, trimming a wick, protecting a flame, placing a bowl where it belongs, remembering the names of those who are absent, asking quietly for a safe night, and then letting silence return. The Roman world contained many beliefs and practices, but at this hour the details soften into a simple human pattern. People make a little light and hope the night will be kind. When the household finally turns away from the shrine, the lamp remains. Its flame is low enough not to disturb sleep, bright enough to mark the room. Rain outside continues. Breath inside slows. The sacred and the ordinary are not separate here. They share the same shelf, the same oil, the same darkness, and the same patient waiting for dawn. Chapter 13: Scribes, Letters, and cargo lists. Some work in the port continues after the heavier labor ends. Not carrying, lifting, or unloading now, but writing, checking, and remembering. In a room near the harbor, a scribe or clerk sits with wax tablets, papyrus, ink, and the day's unsettled details. Rain makes the room feel removed from the street, though the street is only a few steps away. Outside are puddles, rope, animals, and closing shutters. Inside are names, numbers, marks, and the calm responsibility of making trade legible. A cargo list is a humble thing, but it gives shape to movement. So many jars from one boat. So many bundles held until morning. A note about damage. A mark beside a name. A reminder that a fee has been paid, or not paid, or must be checked when the seal is examined. The scribe's hand moves in small, careful strokes. The sound of writing is almost nothing, yet the mind can rest in it, scratch, pause, breath, scratch again. The lamp on the desk must be kept close enough to see by, but not so close that smoke troubles the page. The scribe adjusts it, then continues. Perhaps his fingers are stained. Perhaps his back aches from leaning. Perhaps he would rather be home, or perhaps he enjoys this last quiet hour when interruptions are fewer and the rain keeps people away. Work that is annoying in the day can become almost peaceful at night if it has a clear end. A messenger arrives briefly with a damp note wrapped under cloth. The door opens, and the room receives a breath of cold, wet air. The lamp leans, the scribe looks up, and the messenger apologizes softly for the late arrival. There is no drama. The note concerns tomorrow, and tomorrow can be placed in the proper stack. The messenger leaves, the door closes, and the room returns to its earlier smallness. On a shelf are older records. Some are neat, some have curled at the edges, some have been handled so often that their corners have softened. These records are not history in the grand sense, yet they are part of how history remains possible. They hold ordinary agreements long enough for people to act on them. Tonight, however, they are not demanding interpretation. They are simply dry things in a wet town, protected by a roof, a box, and someone's habit of care. When the final mark is made, the scribe does not immediately rise. He looks over the list once more. There is comfort in completion, especially when completion is modest. A tablet smoothed. A note tied. A page weighted. A lamp lowered. Outside, the harbor waits with its tied boats and covered goods. Inside, the written day has been gathered and set down, ready to sleep beside the town that produced it. Chapter 14: Donkeys in the Alley. In an alley behind the harbor street, the pack animals are brought under cover. Donkeys stand with their heads lowered, ears turning occasionally toward rain, voices, and the scrape of a bucket. Their day has been made of loads, turns, stops, starts, and human impatience. Now the rain darkens their coats and makes the stones beneath them glossy. A handler rubs one animal down with a rough cloth, not tenderly in a sentimental way, but with practical kindness born from dependence. The alley smells of wet straw, animal warmth, leather, mud, and the sour trace of old feed. A basket hangs from a peg. A harness is laid across a rail. Someone checks a strap for cracks and sets it aside to be repaired when light is better. The animals shift their weight. Hooves make dull sounds in the straw. A donkey exhales strongly through its nose, and the breath briefly seems warmer than the whole alley. Rainwater runs along the center of the stones, following a path worn by many storms. The handler knows to stand to one side. He moves a bundle of hay away from the damp edge and places a small weight against a door that sometimes swings in the wind. None of these actions is remarkable, yet together they create shelter. Shelter is rarely one thing. It is a roof, yes, but also a moved bucket, a tied strap, a dry corner, a remembered leak, and a person willing to check once more before leaving. A child appears at the alley entrance, sent perhaps to ask when someone will come inside. The child stays under the overhang, watching the animals with sleepy interest. One donkey turns its head. The child whispers something unnecessary and affectionate. The handler replies that the animals are nearly settled. The exchange is brief, but it warms the alley more than the lamp does. In the rain, even small kindnesses seem clearer. The Roman town depends on these animals in ways that are easy to overlook. Goods move because backs carry them, human backs, animal backs, cart axles, rope, shoulders, hands. By evening, every bearer of weight deserves stillness. The donkey does not know empire, taxes, trade routes, or harbor schedules. It knows feed, pressure, voice, rain, and the relief of having the load removed. That is enough for this scene. When the animals are tied for the night, the handler stands for a moment listening. The rain on the alley roof is steady. The animals chew. A strap drips from its peg. Somewhere beyond the alley, a shutter closes. Then the handler lifts the lamp and goes inside, leaving the donkeys in their warm, straw-scented dimness, patient as stones and softer than the night around them. Chapter 15. Cloaks hung near the door. At thresholds throughout the town, wet cloaks are being removed. This is one of the simplest signs that evening has become night. A cloak carries the outside with it: rain, street smell, smoke, salt, the brush of other bodies under awnings, and the chill that gathers near the harbor after sunset. When it is lifted from the shoulders and hung near the door, the person beneath it becomes part of the room again. The cloak is heavy with damp. It does not fold neatly at first. It must be shaken, wrung at the edge, or spread where air can reach it. Sandals are placed nearby, sometimes upside down, sometimes beside a wall, sometimes exactly where someone will trip over them later if they are not moved. A practical voice says to move them. A tired hand obeys. The floor near the threshold becomes a small geography of wetness, drops, footprints, dark patches, and a mat doing its best. There is something deeply restful about the boundary between outside and inside. Beyond the door are rain, stone, strangers, work, bargaining, animals, and the uncertain distance between places. Inside are lamps, bowls, familiar walls, bedding, stored food, and voices that do not need to introduce themselves. The threshold is where the day is taken off in layers. First the cloak, then the sandals, then perhaps the belt pouch, the tool, the basket, the public expression worn for dealing with others. Someone checks the cloak's position so it will drip into a basin rather than onto stored grain. Someone else complains mildly that the room will smell of wet wool all night. It probably will. But the smell is also proof that people have come home. A perfectly dry room on such an evening would feel almost suspicious, as if it had refused contact with the world. This room has accepted its share of weather and is now making it manageable. Near the doorway, a lamp throws shadows across the hanging cloth. Drops gather along the lower edge and fall one by one. If you listen to them separately from the rain outside, they create a tiny interior weather, a quieter version of the storm. Outside rain belongs to the town. Inside dripping belongs to the household. One is broad, the other intimate. Eventually no one watches the cloaks anymore. They hang in the dimness, slowly surrendering water to the basin and air. The people who wore them move toward food, conversation, or bed. The threshold rests. The door is barred. The wet street remains where it is, just beyond the wood, and the house lets the night come no farther than the place where the cloaks hang. Chapter 16: The Quiet Between Two Showers. At some point in the evening, the rain weakens. It does not stop completely. It simply grows thin enough for other sounds to appear. The change is subtle, but the whole town seems to notice. Under awnings, people look out. In doorways, someone lifts a head. In the harbor, the small noises of boats become clearer, a rope tightening, water touching wood, a mast answering a light wind. The quiet between showers is not silence. It is the town revealed in layers after the rain has stepped back. From the higher streets, one might hear distant surf beyond the harbor wall. It comes and goes like breath under a blanket. Closer by, roof lines continue to drip. Water falls from tiles into jars, from gutters into alleys, from awning corners into puddles that have been struck so often they seem polished. A cart will turn somewhere far away, and because the rain has softened, the sound travels farther than expected. Then it fades behind a wall. This pause changes people's decisions. A man who has been waiting under shelter decides this is the moment to cross the street. A woman gathers her basket and moves quickly toward home. A tavern customer looks up from his cup and judges whether he can reach his doorway before the next shower. The town begins a brief, gentle rearrangement, as if the rain has opened a narrow passage and everyone who needs it steps through without fuss. The air smells newly washed, though not clean exactly. It smells of wet stone, open drains, crushed herbs from a market basket, damp straw, and smoke settling lower now that the rain has eased. The lamps appear steadier because fewer drops interrupt their light. Reflections in the street stretch longer. The whole scene seems to hold its breath, not anxiously, but with the calm awareness that weather is only resting. For a sleep story, this in-between hour is especially useful. It gives the mind a place where nothing advances too quickly. The rain has been heard. The next rain is possible. But for now, the town is suspended in a mild pause. People move quietly through it, each carrying a small purpose: reach the door, cover the goods, fetch water, check the animal, bring in the cloth, return the borrowed bowl. Then, little by little, the rain thickens again. First a few drops, then a soft gathering on roofs, then the familiar steady sound returning. Those who crossed have crossed. Those who waited continue waiting. The harbor darkens back into rain, and the town accepts the second shower as easily as the first, with less surprise and even more readiness for sleep. Slow interlude: the town without hurry. A town without hurry is not a town without work. It is a town that has placed work into the correct hour. During the day, the harbor street may be quick with bargaining, carrying, judging, and calling out. But night teaches proportion. A jar can wait. A road can wait. A question about price can wait. Even a worry, if treated gently, can sometimes be persuaded to wait beside the door until morning. In this Roman evening, the rain helps with that persuasion. It lowers the ceiling of attention. Instead of imagining distant provinces, crowded forums, and long roads, the mind stays with a single puddle reflecting a lamp. Instead of thinking about ships crossing open water, it watches one tide boat rock in a sheltered basin. Instead of following every life in the town, it rests with one hand placing one bar across one door. Hurry may return at dawn, but it has not returned yet. For now, the town has given itself permission to be small. The harbor is still the harbor, but it is also a cradle of dark water. The warehouses are still warehouses, but they are also quiet rooms full of covered shapes. The street is still a street, but it is also a path for rain to find the sea. Chapter 17: A walk past closed stalls. After many shutters have closed, the market street becomes a place of outlines. Stalls that were colorful and demanding in daylight are now simple shapes under damp canvas. Baskets are stacked mouth down. Crates are pushed beneath counters. Hooks hang empty or nearly empty. A few leaves cling to the ground, flattened by rain. The narrator, or the quiet mind imagining the narrator, walks slowly past without needing to buy, ask, choose, compare, or hurry. Closed stalls have a peaceful honesty. They no longer call attention to what they contain. They have done their speaking for the day. A fish board has been rinsed. A fruit basket has been covered. A scale has been taken inside. A small sign, if there is one, is unreadable in the low light. The rain makes every stall equal for a while, giving the same dark shine to expensive goods, cheap goods, empty shelves, and forgotten straw. A cat slips beneath one counter and disappears. Its movement is quick, but not alarming. Somewhere behind the stalls, a person coughs inside a room. A lamp moves past a shutter crack and then vanishes. The street is not abandoned, it is simply turned inward. Life continues behind wood, cloth, and plaster, while the public spaces hold their breath under rain. Walking here, you notice the remains of trade as small textures rather than information. A broken reed from a basket. A twist of cord. The heel mark of a sandal in mud. A dark line where water runs around a crate. A smell of herbs released by wetness. These details do not need to be interpreted. They can be allowed to pass one by one, each giving the mind a tiny place to rest before the next arrives. The closed market also changes the sense of time. In the day, stalls belong to urgency, fresh goods, bargaining, choosing the best piece, arriving before something sells out. At night, they belong to waiting. Everything left in place has been entrusted to darkness, to a latch, to a neighbor's awareness, to luck, and to morning. This trust is not naive. It is simply necessary. Town life depends on thousands of small things being left alone until needed again. The walk ends without event. Perhaps you turn back toward the harbor. Perhaps you continue toward a quieter lane. The market remains behind you, covered and rain-dark, its rows of stalls like sleeping animals. Tomorrow it will open its eyes in pieces, one shutter, one basket, one scale, one call, one customer at a time. Tonight it only listens to the rain. Chapter 18, Harbor Watch After Dark. When the town has quieted, responsibility passes to those whose work begins where others' work ends. Watchmen, gatekeepers, and harbor guards do not make the night dramatic, they make it ordinary enough for everyone else to sleep. They stand under shelter, walk short rounds, listen to the harbor, and notice what has changed since the last time they looked. In rain, their work becomes less about seeing far and more about hearing carefully. A watchman adjusts his cloak at the neck and looks along the quay. The lamps are fewer now. Most boats are dark. A warehouse door is barred. A tavern still shows a low light. The customs house has gone quiet. He knows which sounds belong and which do not. Rope against wood belongs. Rain in gutters belongs. A donkey shifting in an alley belongs. A sudden shout might not belong, but tonight there is no shout. Only weather, water, and the occasional human step. The watchman's shelter is simple, a roof edge, a guard post, a recessed doorway, perhaps a brazier if the place is fortunate. His hands may be cold. His sandals may be damp. Yet there is comfort in the regularity of the round. Walk to the corner. Look toward the basin. Listen near the warehouse. Check the gate. Return. The same path, taken again and again, slowly turns night from something vast into something manageable. A gatekeeper farther up the street sits where he can see the road entering town. Rain makes the road shine faintly. No cart approaches. No late traveler calls out. He rubs his hands together and watches water gather along the threshold. His duty is partly practical, partly symbolic. A gate that is watched tells the sleeping town that the edge has not been forgotten. Boundaries matter more at night, not because danger is everywhere, but because sleep requires trust. The harbor guard pauses near a moored vessel and listens. The boat knocks gently against its protection. He places one hand on a post as if greeting it. Perhaps he has no affection for the post, yet the gesture feels companionable in the dark. He checks a line with his foot, sees that it holds, and moves on. Behind him, the water returns to its small movements. The night watch does not need to discover anything. Its success is the absence of discovery. No broken door, no loose boat, no lost animal, no fire, no alarm. Just rain, rounds, lamps, and a town continuing to rest because a few people remain awake in quiet service to its sleep. Chapter 19: Roof Tiles, Gutters, and Sleep. As the night deepens, the architecture of rain becomes more noticeable than the movement of people. Roof tiles take over the story. They receive the rain, divide it, guide it, and release it. Each roof has its own voice depending on pitch, age, material, and the spaces beneath it. Some tiles hiss softly. Some click with individual drops. Some send water quickly into gutters. Others let it linger at the edge before it falls in thick, irregular beads. A Roman town at night can be imagined as a collection of roofs speaking to one another. The harbor roofs answer the warehouse roofs. The bathhouse roof answers the small houses. The covered stalls answer the awnings. Water travels down all of them, making temporary instruments from practical surfaces. No one designed the town for lullaby, yet rain discovers the music in it. In a courtyard, a gutter sends water into a channel that glows faintly in lamplight. The channel carries it away from the sleeping rooms. This small piece of engineering is easy to ignore until it fails. Tonight it works. That is enough. The water leaves the roof, avoids the stored goods, misses the bedding, fills the jar, and finds the street. The household does not praise the gutter, but the mind may praise it quietly on their behalf. Inside sleeping rooms, people hear these roof sounds with different degrees of attention. A child may listen until the pattern becomes a blanket. An adult may hear only enough to know the rain has not become dangerous. Someone half awake may count drops without meaning to, then lose count and drift. The roof turns weather into a sound that can be trusted because it is overhead, outside, and repeated. The materials of the room respond as well. Plaster cools. Wood swells slightly. Linen absorbs a hint of damp from the air. A lamp flame lowers. A bowl on a shelf reflects a dull line of light. These details are not dramatic, but they are intimate. Sleep enters a room through such changes, a lessening of speech, a dimming flame, a familiar roof sound, a body accepting the shape of its bed. By now, the harbor is mostly unseen. It remains present only as a low suggestion beyond walls and roofs. The rain has moved the story upward, from quay and street to tile and gutter, then inward, toward listening. The town does not need to be watched as much as heard. It sleeps beneath its own weather, each roof translating the sky into a softer language. Chapter 20: Bed Platforms and Linen. Inside the sleeping rooms, the evening becomes quieter still. Beds or bed platforms are made ready with simple linen, folded cloth, perhaps a blanket, perhaps a cushion that has held the shape of many nights. The room is not arranged for display. It is arranged for use. A person lowers themselves onto the bed with the careful relief of someone who has been standing, walking, carrying, or waiting for too many hours. Linen in damp weather has a particular feel. It may be cool at first, then slowly accept the warmth of the body. It smells faintly of storage, smoke, skin, and the room itself. A folded cloth becomes a pillow. A blanket is pulled higher. A child turns twice before settling. An adult lies on their back for a moment, listening to the roof, then turns toward the wall. The ordinary choreography of bedtime needs no audience, yet it is one of the oldest forms of peace. Before sleep, there are small adjustments. A lamp is moved farther away. A door curtain is straightened. A cup is set within reach. Someone remembers a task and decides it can wait. This decision is important. A day is not truly over until the mind agrees that unfinished things may remain unfinished without punishment until morning. In a port town, there is always more that could be checked. Another rope, another jar, another shutter, another account. But night teaches limits. The sleeping room hears the world in muffled form. The tavern is no longer distinct. The harbor is a low darkness. The alley animals are quiet. Rain on the roof remains. A late footstep passes and fades. Someone in another room murmurs, perhaps in conversation, perhaps in sleep. These sounds do not demand rising. They reassure because they belong to a known environment. The town is not silent, but it is safe enough to ignore. Bedding also carries the climate of the place. In a coastal town, dampness is a companion. People learn where to store cloth, when to air it, how to fold it away from walls, how to accept that not every night will feel perfectly dry. Comfort is not perfection. Comfort is knowing what to do with imperfection, shake the cloak, move the sandals, turn the blanket, place the lamp, trust the roof. Soon the body grows heavier than thought. The details of the room loosen. Linen, wall, roof, rain, breath, lamp, each remains, but none asks to be named. The Roman port town continues outside, yet the sleeping person no longer needs to hold it in mind. The bed has taken over the story. Chapter 21, Dreaming Beside the Sea. Sleep beside the sea is never entirely separate from the sea. Even when walls stand between the bed and the harbor, the air carries salt, the night carries damp, and the mind retains the slow movement of dark water. A person falling asleep in this port town may not consciously picture boats or ropes, yet the harbor has shaped the day deeply enough to enter dreams as motion, distance, arrival, and return. The last smell before sleep might be lamp smoke. Oil lamps leave a trace that is both practical and atmospheric, a warm, faintly bitter line in the room. Mixed with sea air, it becomes the scent of a coastal night, flame and salt, shelter and exposure. The lamp is lowered but not forgotten. It marks the boundary between waking and sleep, just as the harbor wall marks the boundary between basin and open water. Dreams in such a place may borrow from ordinary labor rather than fantasy. A person might dream of counting jars, but the numbers become waves. A rope might become a road. A shutter might open onto water instead of a street. A donkey's hoof might sound like a drop from a gutter. The mind rearranges the day gently, using the materials it has been given. Because nothing terrible has happened in the story, the dreams have no need to become sharp. Outside, the boats remain where they were tied. This is a comforting thought. While people sleep, certain objects continue performing their quiet duties. Ropes hold. Anchors rest. Doors stay barred. Jars receive drips. Embers fade. The world does not require constant human attention in order to remain itself for a few hours. Sleep depends on this trust more than people usually notice. The sea beyond the quay is larger than the town, larger than the day's accounts, larger than any single household worry. Yet at night, heard from bed, it can become gentle. Its distance helps. It is not at the threshold. It does not enter the room. It simply exists beyond the sleeping streets, moving under the same rain that touches the roof. To remember it is to set one's own thoughts beside something wider and slower. So the sleeper drifts with a town-shaped dream. A lamp becomes a star reflected in harbor water. A closed stall becomes a dark boat. The rain becomes footsteps, then linen, then breath. The Roman port town rests beside the sea, and the sea, for tonight, seems willing to rest beside it. Chapter 22, Before Midnight Silence. Before midnight, the town reaches a kind of suspended quiet. It is not the absolute silence of emptiness, because no lived-in place is empty in that way. It is a silence made from reduced activity, from sound spaced far apart. A drip. A shift of wood. A sleeper turning. A late murmur. A wave touching stone. Each sound appears, completes itself, and leaves a wide calm behind it. The tavern talk has thinned. The last bowls are stacked. The bathhouse has lowered its lamps. The market stalls are closed. The customs house keeps its records in darkness. The donkeys stand under cover. The watchman walks his round. The household shrine lamp burns low or has been pinched out. The town is still made of many lives, but for this hour those lives have stopped pressing outward. They are folded into rooms. Rain at this depth of night feels different from rain at evening. Earlier, it shaped decisions: wait, hurry, cover, close, cross. Now it shapes sleep. It becomes background, almost bodily, like breathing that belongs to the town itself. The roofs receive it without surprise. Gutters carry it without complaint. Puddles widen because no one is stepping through them often enough to disturb them. Somewhere, a person is awake without distress. Not every wakefulness is worry. The watchman is awake. A mother may be awake beside a child. A clerk may wake briefly and remember whether he closed the box, then realize he did. A traveler may lie in a rented room listening to unfamiliar rain and slowly learn that unfamiliar does not have to mean unsafe. The night has room for these quiet wakefulnesses. The harbor basin is very dark now. Lamps do not reach far across it. The boats are mostly silhouettes. A mast line crosses the sky, then disappears when cloud thickens. Water moves in small dull flashes where it catches some hidden light. If a person stood on the quay at this hour, they might feel the town behind them more than see it: walls, roofs, sleeping rooms, stored goods, all gathered into one damp presence. But the story does not ask anyone to stand there long. It only lets the image exist: a Roman port before midnight, held between rain and sea, watched lightly, slept in deeply, troubled by nothing larger than water finding its way downward. This is enough silence. This is enough history. Chapter 23, The First Hint of Tomorrow's Trade. Even while the town sleeps, tomorrow is already present in quiet forms. It waits in covered goods, tied boats, cooling ovens, jars left near doorways, ledgers closed on desks, and tools placed where hands will find them before sunrise. A port town never fully escapes the future because trade is a chain of preparations. Yet at night, tomorrow is not demanding. It is packed away, labeled, folded, and left in darkness. In the bakery, grain or flour waits for early work. The oven is not hot now, but it remembers heat and will receive it again. On a shelf, a cloth covers bread reserved for morning. The baker sleeps, perhaps lightly, because bakers often belong to hours when others are still dreaming. The rain outside does not change this. If anything, it makes the coming warmth of the oven more certain in the imagination. At the quay, boats hold their places. Some may leave with the morning tide or the first workable light. Others will receive cargo. Others will wait for weather, orders, repairs, or men who are never as early as they promised. The ropes do not know these plans. They only hold. In their holding, they make tomorrow possible without thinking about it. In the warehouses, covered goods rest in darkness. A jar that was counted today may be moved tomorrow. A bundle placed under the western wall may be opened, inspected, sold, or sent onward. The warehouse itself does not care. It is a patient interval between one movement and the next. Sleep is similar. It is not the end of life, only the covered storage of the self until morning. The watchman, walking his round, sees tomorrow in small hazards as well, a puddle that should be swept, a loose board to mention, a gutter running too close to a doorway, a cart left at an inconvenient angle. He may remember these things or forget some of them. Morning will reveal what needs attention. Night is not required to solve everything. For now, tomorrow remains gentle because it is still hidden. No shouting at the market. No bargaining. No lifting. No heat from the sun on stone. Only the quiet promise that all these sleeping arrangements will unfold again. The rain falls on the packed goods and tied boats without waking them. The port rests inside its own preparations, and the future waits with unusual politeness. Chapter 24, Rain fading toward dawn. Near the far edge of night, the rain begins to fade. It has spent itself slowly, not in one final burst, but in a thinning of sound so gradual that only the lightest sleepers notice. The steady roof music becomes intermittent. Gutters continue after the sky has softened, releasing stored water in delayed drops. The town remains asleep, but the weather has begun to withdraw from it, leaving behind dark stone, full jars, damp cloth, and a cooler air before dawn. The harbor is not yet awake. Boats rest in the basin, their ropes slack or tight according to the small movements of water. The masts are pale lines against a sky that is no longer black but not yet blue. Somewhere beyond the harbor wall, the sea continues its larger breathing. The first birds have not fully taken over. There is a brief hour when the world seems undecided, neither night nor morning, neither rain nor clear weather. In the streets, puddles hold the last lamps in broken shapes. A shutter remains closed. A basket sits under cover. A broom leans against a wall where someone left it. The town looks abandoned only because people are still inside their rooms, not yet returned to their public selves. This is a tender illusion. Soon there will be movement, but for a little while the streets belong to water, stone, and the memory of footsteps. A household jar gives a final drop around sound. A cloak near a door is still damp at the hem. Sandals wait. A shrine lamp may have gone out, leaving a ribbon of scent. Linen holds the warmth of sleepers. The rain has entered the night without invading it. It has touched everything and ruined almost nothing. That is why the story can remain calm. The weather has been absorbed by habit. The first person to wake may be a baker, a watchman finishing his round, a worker with an early load, or someone who simply opens their eyes before they mean to. They will hear the changed roof and know that the rain has nearly passed. They may lie still for a moment, enjoying the knowledge before duty returns. There is a luxury in that small pause, the world has not yet asked for anything, and the body has not yet answered. As dawn approaches, the port town keeps resting. The rain fades into drips, the drips into memory, and the memory into the faint light gathering above the roofs. The story does not need to follow the day into noise. It can stop here, where night loosens its hold gently and morning waits outside the door like a guest who has not yet knocked. Closing, harbor at rest. By the end of the night, the rain has done what evening rain often does best. It has made the world smaller without making it lonely. It has drawn people under awnings, into taverns, through thresholds, around lamps, and finally into sleep. The harbor has not disappeared, but it has become quieter in the mind, less a place of trade than a dark basin holding reflections and tide boats. The market has closed. The warehouses have settled. The bathhouse steam has thinned. The animals are fed. The records are boxed. The cloaks drip by the door. All the separate parts of the town have been gently brought to rest. A Roman port town would wake early. That is certain. The bakery would stir before many households. Someone would sweep water from a threshold. Someone would curse a swollen latch. Someone would discover that a basket had been left too close to the damp. Someone would reopen a stall, relight a lamp, lift a jar, count coins, check seals, and ask whether a certain boat was ready. Ordinary life would return with all its practical demands. But not yet. The story belongs to the interval before those demands gather their voices. For now, let the boats remain where they are. Let the mast stand quietly against the paling sky. Let the rope stay wet and strong. Let the shutters stay closed for a little longer. Let the watchman finish his round without discovering anything. Let the household jars hold what they gathered from the roof. Let the last lamp burn low or go out without ceremony. Nothing needs to be improved in this moment. Nothing needs to be explained beyond its own gentle presence. And if your thoughts are still moving, they can be placed somewhere in this town for safekeeping. Set one beside the covered baskets in the market, another near the warm brick of the bakery oven, another under the awning where rainwater falls in a steady line. Set the heaviest thought down by the harbor, where the stone quay has held heavier things than thought and has not complained. The rain will not solve everything, but it can soften the edges for a while. The night ends without a lesson. It ends as many nights have ended, with water dripping from tiles, with bodies asleep, with tools waiting, with the sea moving beyond the quay, and with morning still gentle because it has not fully arrived. A small Roman port town rests under a sky that has nearly finished raining. That is enough. The ropes hold. The doors hold. The lamps fade. The harbor breathes. And the story, like the town, can finally be left in peace. Afterward, leaving the harbor slowly. There is no need to leave the harbor quickly. Even after the closing image has settled, the mind may remain there a little longer, as if standing beneath an arcade while the first grey of morning gathers above the tiled roofs. The rain has faded, but the town still carries it everywhere. It shines in the cracks of stone, darkens the posts along the quay, weighs the ropes, cools the thresholds, and waits in jars with the quiet patience of useful water. A long sleep story can end more than once. It can end at the closed market, at the watched gate, at the bed, at the roof, at the harbor, or at the first hint of dawn. Each ending says the same thing in a different material. The day has been set down. The night has held. The ordinary world has not needed to become extraordinary in order to be worthy of attention. A simple town in rain has given the mind enough surfaces to touch and enough shadows to release. If any image remains, let it be the smallest one, a lamp flame reflected in a puddle near the quay. The flame itself is protected under a doorway. The reflection trembles in the water. Rain rings widen across it and fade. A footstep passes nearby but does not disturb it for long. The lamp continues, the puddle continues, and the harbor beyond them remains dark, breathing, and patient. Now even that image can grow dim. The doorway loses detail. The puddle becomes only a soft brightness. The rope, the mast, the stone, the roof, the jar, the cloak, the bed, and the sea all settle into the same quiet distance. The Roman town is still there, but it no longer asks to be watched. It can keep its own night. It can wait for its own morning. And you can let it go. Extended slow passage, the small geography of shelter. Shelter in this town is not one grand thing. It is made from many small arrangements, each one noticed more clearly because of the rain. A deep doorway shelters one person well enough. A cloth awning shelters three if they stand close and do not mind the drip at the corner. A warehouse roof shelters goods but not always the threshold, where water still creeps in along the floor. A cloak shelters the shoulders but not the hem. A hand shelters a lamp flame while someone crosses from one room to another. A jar shelters nothing, yet it receives what the roof gives and turns weather into a useful supply. If you trace the town by shelter rather than by streets, it becomes a softer map. There is the sheltered place where porters wait with their loads lowered. There is the sheltered place where a dog curls beneath a cart. There is the sheltered place under the bakery eave where people pause because the oven warmth reaches farther than the doorway. There is the sheltered place beside the bathhouse wall where steam briefly escapes and makes the rain smell warmer. There is the sheltered place beneath a stair, where a basket has been tucked until morning. None of these places is famous, but each one gives the evening a small kindness. The people of the town know these places without drawing them. They know which wall gives the best cover from a sea wind, which alley stays too wet, which stones can be crossed without splashing, which doorway belongs to someone patient and which doorway should not be used for waiting. This kind of knowledge is quiet and physical. It lives in shoulders that turn against rain, feet that choose one side of the lane, hands that pull a basket closer to the wall, and eyes that measure the sky before a crossing. For the sleepy mind, shelter is a calming subject because it makes the world understandable in small portions. You do not need to imagine the entire Roman coast. You only need one awning. You do not need to understand every household. You only need one lamp behind one shutter. The rain narrows attention, and shelter narrows it further, until the whole evening can be held in a few simple images: covered goods, warm bread, wet sandals, a doorway, and the sound of water falling just beyond reach. Extended slow passage, clay, wood, rope, and oil. The materials of the town are old companions of human hands. Clay has been shaped into jars, tiles, lamps, and vessels for storage. Wood has become doors, shutters, benches, handles, carts, shelves, and the hulls of boats. Rope has been twisted from fiber and taught to hold, pull, bind, lift, and secure. Oil has passed from press to jar to lamp to flame, becoming light in the hour when daylight is no longer generous. In the rain, these materials seem less like objects and more like participants in the evening. Clay receives water differently depending on its purpose. A roof tile sheds it. A jar holds it. A lamp resists it only if kept under shelter. A floor tile darkens and cools under it. The town is full of clay learning what to do with rain. Wood swells slightly and complains at hinges. A shutter that closed easily in dry weather asks for another push. A bench near the doorway smells of damp grain and old smoke. Boat timber in the harbor moves almost imperceptibly against the ropes, as if remembering the tree it once was and the sea it now belongs to. Rope is perhaps the most patient material of the port. It does not shine like metal or glow like lamps, but it makes rest possible. A boat can sleep only because rope holds it. A bundle can wait only because cord keeps it gathered. A load can be lifted because fiber has been twisted into strength. In the rain, rope darkens and becomes heavier. It leaves a smell on the hands. It roughens the skin. It asks to be coiled properly, not because it is delicate, but because careless rope becomes trouble at the exact moment when trouble is least welcome. Oil is quieter still. It does not declare itself until flame touches it. Then it gives the town its small islands of sight. A lamp on a desk, a lamp at a shrine, a lamp in a tavern, a lamp carried through a warehouse, a lamp behind a cloth curtain, each one depends on oil stored from some earlier labor. The flame may look fragile, but behind it are groves, presses, jars, trade, hands, and habit. The sleepy story does not need to follow all that history. It only needs to see the flame and feel how much calm can gather around a little light. Extended slow passage, the human pace of evening. Evening slows people in different ways. The young may still have quickness in them, stepping over puddles, ducking under awnings, laughing when rain catches their hair. The old move more deliberately, not necessarily because they are weak, but because they have learned that wet stone deserves respect. Workers move with the heaviness of finished effort. Shopkeepers move with the alertness of people who must not forget anything before closing. Children move between sleepiness and curiosity, drawn to lamps, animals, and the forbidden edges of puddles. The town contains all these paces at once, and the rain blends them without making them the same. A porter rests under an awning while a child runs past and is called back. A clerk writes slowly while a messenger arrives quickly and leaves quickly. A baker works with steady hands while customers come in short, irregular bursts. A watchman walks at the measured pace of someone whose task is to continue rather than arrive. The evening is not a single rhythm. It is many rhythms gradually agreeing to grow quieter. In the middle of the day, pace can feel competitive. Who reaches the stall first, who secures the best price, who unloads before the next cart blocks the way, who speaks loudly enough to be heard. At night, especially in rain, pace becomes more forgiving. Delay is understandable. Waiting is ordinary. A person standing under shelter is not necessarily idle, they are obeying weather. A person moving slowly is not necessarily reluctant, they are protecting a jar, a flame, a dry corner of cloth, or their own balance on slick stone. This is one reason the scene is restful. It offers movement without urgency. The mind can follow a person from key to doorway without fearing that something will be missed. It can watch hands fold a cloth, lift a latch, pour oil, test a knot, or lower a basket, and each action has enough time around it. The human pace of evening is not empty. It is full of small completions. Each one says, a little more of the day has been brought safely in. Extended slow passage, a lamp seen from across the street. There is a lamp across the street, and because the rain has made the street dark, the lamp seems farther away than it is. It burns behind a partly covered opening, perhaps in a shop that has already closed or in a room above one. The flame itself cannot be seen clearly. What you see is the amber shape it makes on plaster, the slight tremble of light when someone passes inside, and its reflection broken in a puddle near the curb. It is a small scene, but the longer you look, the more complete it becomes. Someone inside that room is finishing an ordinary task. Perhaps they are stacking bowls, folding a cloth, counting a few coins, or speaking softly to another person already lying down. The lamp does not reveal the details, and that is part of its calm. It allows life to be present without making it public. In a crowded town, privacy is often incomplete, but at night the rain helps. It blurs outlines, lowers voices, and turns a visible lamp into a respectful suggestion rather than an intrusion. The reflection below the lamp is less steady than the light itself. Raindrops disturb it again and again. Each ring widens, crosses another ring, and vanishes. For a moment the amber shape breaks into pieces, then it returns. This quiet breaking and returning can hold the mind for a long time. It resembles thought before sleep. An image forms, trembles, is interrupted, and reforms more softly. Nothing has been lost. The surface has only moved. Across the street, the lamp continues. It is not bright enough to conquer the weather. It does not need to. Its purpose is local, to help someone see a bowl, a latch, a child's face, a shelf, a sleeping place. A sleep story can learn from such a lamp. It does not have to illuminate everything. It only has to give enough light for the next gentle image, and then the next, until darkness itself feels safe. Extended slow passage, the sea kept at a distance. The sea is the largest presence in the story, but it is not the loudest. The harbor wall keeps it at a distance, and the rain keeps attention close. This is important. Open sea can be thrilling, dangerous, profitable, mysterious, and immense. A sleep story does not need all that vastness at once. It needs the sea softened by the shape of a port, water held in a basin, boats tied, waves reduced to rocking, salt air moving through streets rather than storms breaking over them. Still, the sea is there. It has brought goods, travelers, news, and smells. It has taken people away and returned others. It has shaped the town's work, diet, architecture, fears, and habits. Even when unseen, it gives the night a horizon. The people in the sleeping rooms may not think about it as they close their eyes, but they live with its nearness. They know which winds mean trouble. They know how ropes sound when strained. They know the difference between ordinary harbor movement and the sound that makes someone get up from bed. Tonight, the sea remains gentle enough. The rain falls downward, not sideways. The harbor basin moves but does not threaten. The tide boats answer the water with mild, repeated motions. This distance makes the sea restful. It is large enough to receive worry, but not close enough to become worry itself. If the mind has anything heavy left to carry, it can imagine placing it beyond the quay, where dark water moves without needing explanation. By dawn, the sea will again become practical. It will be judged for weather, departure, labor, and trade. But in the night, from within the rain-softened town, it is almost like a second sky lying low beyond the stones. It reflects little, reveals little, and asks for nothing. It simply remains, deep and slow, while the Roman port sleeps beside it. Extended slow passage, morning not yet open. There is a special calm in the moment when morning exists only as possibility. The sky has begun to pale, but no one has fully claimed the day. Doors remain shut. Fires are not yet rebuilt. The first strong voices have not yet entered the street. The rain has almost stopped, but its evidence is everywhere, giving the town a washed and waiting appearance. This is not the lively beginning of morning. It is the breath before beginning. In that breath, everything seems more patient than usual. The baker has not yet opened the door. The porter has not yet lifted the load. The clerk has not yet untied the day's records. The market seller has not yet arranged goods into persuasive order. The watchman, perhaps, is the only person who has watched the night become this pale edge of morning, and even he does not hurry it. A watched dawn still comes at its own pace. The streets hold a few sounds that belong to neither night nor day. A final drip from a roof. A bird testing one note and then falling silent. A sleeper turning behind a shutter. The faint movement of harbor water. These sounds feel widely spaced, as if the town has room around each of them. Soon that room will fill. Wheels, calls, animals, and bargaining will return. But the story stops before the filling, because sleep prefers the threshold. Morning not yet open is a kind of mercy. It lets the mind know that the night has passed safely while also refusing to demand wakefulness. In imagination, you can remain there as long as needed, under a fading sky, beside rain-dark stone, with the harbor breathing slowly and the town still folded inward. The Roman day will begin, but not in this final moment. This final moment belongs to rest. Extended slow passage, letting the details dissolve. At the very end, the details can begin to dissolve. Earlier, each object had its own place, the rope on the post, the jar under the roofline, the lamp in the customs house, the cloak by the door, the bread cooling near the oven, the donkey in the alley, the shutter darkened by rain. These images help the mind move slowly through the town. Now they no longer need to remain separate. They can soften into one another, the way reflections soften when the water beneath them is touched by light rain. The rope becomes only a dark line. The jar becomes only a hollow sound. The lamp becomes only warmth. The cloak becomes only the idea of coming home. The bread becomes only the memory of an oven. The donkey becomes only a quiet breath in straw. The shutter becomes only a boundary between weather and sleep. Nothing is lost by this fading. In fact, the fading is part of the rest. A story for sleep gives shape gently, and then it gives permission for shape to blur. The Roman town itself becomes less exact. It is no longer necessary to know which street leads to the bathhouse or which warehouse door was barred last. The harbor is no longer a set of boats, ropes, posts, and reflections. It is simply the harbor, dark and low and calm. The houses are no longer separate households with their own jars, lamps, and sleepers. They are simply the sleeping town. Even the rain is no longer a pattern of drops on tile, awning, water, and stone. It is only a softness around everything. This is a peaceful way to leave history. Not with a conclusion, not with a lesson, and not with a sudden return to the present, but by allowing the imagined past to grow dim at the same pace as a lamp burning low. The people inside the story do not know they have been watched. They do not need to know. They have their own night, their own weather, their own morning waiting behind the roofs. The listener has only borrowed the scene for a while, the way one might borrow shelter under an awning until the rain becomes gentle enough to continue. So let the harbor become shadow. Let the market become covered shapes. Let the bakery become warmth without edges. Let the bathhouse steam become mist. Let the watchman's footsteps become so distant that they are almost part of the rain. Let the sea remain beyond the quay, moving slowly in darkness. And when even these images begin to fade, there is nothing more to gather, nothing more to carry, and nothing more to keep awake for.